What's up, everybody? Welcome into this special NFC Championship edition of Inside the Birds. I am your host, Andrew DiCecco, and I'm joined by a very special guest. You probably know him from his time in Philadelphia when he served as the quarterback's coach from 1999 to 2001, and then, of course, becoming the offensive coordinator for 4 seasons. And then, can't forget him becoming the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings for 5 seasons after that. That would be one, Brad Childress. Brad, I appreciate you taking the time.
Good, Andrew. Things got to be at a all-time high from an excitement standpoint there in Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to imagine you're enjoying the Florida weather compared to winters in Philadelphia or Chicago.
Well, I am, but people down here would tell you it's cold. But I came from Minnesota at Christmas time. It's single digits, so 50s is not bad for me.
So first thing, Brad, just your big picture takeaways from the Eagles season.
Well, I think they had a great season by all marks. Obviously, it started in the offseason with finding a guy like Saquon Barkley coming down I-95 or however you want to get there, Jersey Turnpike. What a great acquisition. And, nobody in their wildest dreams could believe that the guy was going to come close to 2,000 yards. But what a great addition he's been. And then we all know about the offensive line and how they've stepped up. Nothing. It all starts up front. When I had Adrian Peterson, we had a good offensive line. He can only do so much himself. So exciting times.
You've coached in so many of these from an offensive coordinator perspective and from a head coaching perspective. What's the secret? How do you prepare for a week like this?
Well, I think you got to treat it as a normal week to the extent that you can. You got to get all your distractions out of the way before you even enter the prep phase of things. There's other people that are, I know within that organization that are attending meetings on how they're going to distribute the Super Bowl tickets. Those are usually in the higher up realms and the administrative realms. Somebody like Kansas City or Philadelphia, for that matter, understands what an undertaking it is to take an organization. But I think as a football coach, you got to center on what got you there and how you're going to attack that scheme and know it's a one and done tournament.
What did you take away from your time in Philadelphia preparing for that when you became a head coach for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, really just that you really needed to be squared away because an interception or a fumble at the wrong time or a wrong play call at the wrong time, can end up costing you a chance to play on as opposed to going home.
What would your message be to a coach experiencing this for the first time or a player experiencing this week for the first time?
Yeah, again, I'm going to go back to the coach in me, especially if I had rookies on the team or younger players on the team, even the Saquon Barkleys of the world that have not been to a game of this magnitude. Just focus on what got you there. Your best will be enough. All we want is the best of what you got. If you give that to us, we're going to be in good shape.
Now, you'd have to transport yourself back to 2004 and even earlier than that. But how did Andy prepare for a week like this? And what did you take from that? Were there any similarities or differences when you were a head coach yourself?
Well, I think when you extend this deep into the preseason, and for us, it took us 4 years to get over the hump to get to the Super Bowl, 4 NFC Championship games, with beating Atlanta and Michael Vick to go to the Super Bowl. But I think you have to keep in mind there's a lot of stuff you'd like to do, but you got to remember where you are in the season. I think you have to keep in mind that you probably practice the second half of the season a little bit differently so that guys don't run out of gas. And then when you extend it into preseason or off season, like Philadelphia has done, like we did there, you got to remember that that's three, 4 more games of wear and tear on that body. So yeah, I think you got to be smart with the way you practice as well.
Do you remember what that week leading up to the 2004 championship game against the Falcons was like for you from a preparational standpoint?
Yeah, it was business as usual. The one thing we had was a gigantic snowstorm at the end of the week, and there were some questions about what time the game started. Were they going to be able to get the stadium shoveled out? And it's already a madhouse in the parking lots and in the park across from the stadium already. But that was about the only thing that was unusual.
I believe you shared with me an interesting story or exchange that you had with the late Jim Johnson leading up to that week. I think you went to his office or he went to your office before that. Do you recall the conversation that we had?
Oh yeah, I remember him telling me he's not going to do this shit forever. And I thought at the time he meant, um, you mean you're done looking at tape tonight? You're going home? And he said, no. He said, I'm talking about coaching. He goes, I'm get my wife Vicky and take her back to California and play golf and look at the ocean and play with my grandkids. And um, I was fortunate enough to coach against him in the last game he ever stood on the sideline when I was at the Vikings against the Eagles in the playoffs. I think a Brian Westbrook screen ran right by me. I wanted to stick my foot out and tackle him there. And then, of course, Asante Samuel had a pick of Tavares Jackson.
That's right.
But yeah, and unfortunately, from then on, Jim coached up in the press box. I think the Eagles went to the NFC Championship game, and Jim was gone in April. So things can turn pretty quickly.
Can you recall whether it was Veterans Stadium or the Link, a moment or a game that was the loudest that you can recall?
Oh boy, probably Veteran Stadium. Those we've there's so many stories about Veteran Stadium, but one of them was they blew off those fireworks right by the sidelines, and I remember running down the ramp and getting out there a little early and getting my headset on, and then I see these boxes, and then all of a sudden they start blowing these fireworks off, and I'm looking at them going, you know what? Somebody's going to get hurt here now with the wind blowing away it is and the ash strip going away, and sure as hell, Todd Pinkston got a fleck of some kind of the firework or whatever, and they had to go in and irrigate his eyes before the championship game there on the sideline.
Oh wow! I actually had a really good conversation with Todd at the combine, and he's a great guy. He's the running back coach for the Chiefs.
He is.
I'm sure you know that, but yeah, no, that's interesting to see how that panned out. I'm sure you would never have expected that having coached them.
No, I never would have, but it's kind of interesting that he took a fellow receiver's place in Greg Lewis, who went to coach the running backs at the Ravens.
That's right. You coached Greg with the Eagles and the Vikings, right?
I did. He's the only receiver that caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So he's got that in his belt to hang there. And I know that Bill Belichick on more than one occasion wanted to trade Andy for me. Hey, I'll take that Greg Lewis kid from you. If and of course Andy wasn't biting.
Now you have a unique perspective here, Brad, because you coached Donovan McNabb. You were his quarterback coach when he was a rookie. Looking at Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels, what are your impressions of him?
Well, I'll tell you what. I guess I can't give enough superlatives to Jayden Daniel. Just being a rookie in a new offense in the NFL, and the success that he's had, both throwing from the pocket and with his ability to move around. Donovan was the same way, but Doug Peterson started 10 of those games that first year where Donovan was able to kind of sit and watch. That was our theory was you shouldn't throw a guy in the fire immediately. Didn't work with Peyton Manning, worked wonderfully with Jayden Daniels, and you could really look through all of them, Sam Darnold on down the line. But that was our plan with him. He started the last 6 games. Yeah, it's a whole new world. I mean, with how fast people run and how hard they hit and the scope of things. But I think, we talk about quarterbacks have to be wired right. And it seems to me from afar that Jayden has that great never too high, never too low mentality. And he really demonstrates that on the field.
Now, when you would coach young quarterbacks, Brad, what was the key for you in terms of just coaching points and really points of emphasis?
Yeah, I think anytime you're stressed or anytime somebody struggles, the best thing you can get to do is to go back to doing things fundamentally sound, making sure that everything from nobody thinks about a center quarterback exchange anymore. And that's right. The thing that starts to play. You only notice it when the ball's on the ground and it's, oh my God, whether it's a shotgun snap or a short yardage snap or a goal line snap. So I just think getting back to the fundamentals with those guys, having them focus on that. If you take care of yourself, then good things have a chance to happen.
So Jalen Hurts just finished his 4th full season as the Eagles starting quarterback.
That's wild.
What have you observed from from Jalen in terms of his growth and evolution at that position?
Yeah, well, I think first of all he's a talented guy. I think he's gotten better throwing the football. But I would say this: they've put an unbelievable offensive line in front of him, and then Howie has gone out and filled those wide receiver spots with any one of those guys can make a play, and then of course Dallas Goedert as well. And then let's not minimize, arguably maybe the guy in the MVP conversation, Saquon Barkley, whether you hand it to him or throw it to him, that's a hell of a thing.
So now I'm going to pivot real quick to Andy Reid, because obviously you spent many years with him, not just with Philadelphia, but with the Kansas City Chiefs as well. How have you seen Andy adapt since the 2000s? In what ways?
Well, I mean, he may be one of the greatest adapters there is. He came with the full West Coast playbook, which would pale into comparison with what he's done now. He's not adverse to when he's looking at college guys on tape of jotting down plays. He's got a whole index card, 3x5 cards sitting right on his desk all the time, plays that he's seen, or maybe he saw in a Maction game on a Wednesday night that he thought maybe we could incorporate. But he's done an unbelievable job of football was different, I would say, in the early 2000s than it is right now. There was a great school of thought when Patrick Mahomes came out that, hey, God, he's only played out of a shotgun and he throws funny. His mechanics are, it doesn't really translate. And now all you ever hear is his name invoked on how he's going about things. But getting back to Andy, I just think he keeps on growing that offense, and there's things that you think you'll never see again. You may not see him again because he doesn't usually like to repeat plays in the game. But he'll steal plays from people and maybe oil them up for 3 or 4 weeks. You're working on it. It's not ready week 3, week 4. You know what? This thing's ready for prime time now. And you'll probably see some of those in this game.
What have you learned most from Andy throughout your career?
I think the biggest thing is just having a plan, making sure that you understand what the undertaking is, and making sure that you over communicate clarity, not only with coaches, but with staff, with personnel, and most importantly with your players, what you expect.
What do you think it is, Brad, about Andy that's allowed his assistants to have gone on and be so successful?
Well, he's a great teacher. I knew a little bit about the West Coast offense when we coached together in Flagstaff in 1986. Obviously, he took it to another level when he went with Mike Holmgren to Green Bay. We took it to a different level, and then all the iterations, the Mike Shanahans of the world that coached in that offense. The outside zone concepts weren't so much part of the West Coast offense then. And I think he's got all those. He's got gap schemes, he's got outside zone schemes, he's got draw schemes in a run game, and then he's cutting edge in terms of the throwing game, and he's got a cutting edge thrower.
Yes, he does. You also crossed paths with Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio during your year in Chicago. What was Vic like behind the scenes, day in and day out? He's a mad scientist, as a lot of players have said.
Yeah, he's an ornery old curmudgeon. Those would be my adjectives for Vic. But a hell of a football coach, and straight talk with the players. There's not a lot of bouquets and flowers being thrown. I mean, he's getting after you to play your best football. Still a good teacher, but very demanding, and has a great overall scheme of things. Not as complicated as some would be, but really, really tough to defend if he can get the right people. That defensive front that he's coaching, you'd pay to have those guys, those two inside techniques, be that strong inside and set that wall.
Do you have a funny or particularly memorable story from your time with Vic?
No, he was just in the press box with me. We'd go back and forth about whether you take a timeout at the end of the half or whether you try to save time and run the clock out and get back to the locker room. So we had a couple candid conversations about that, but overall, pretty good football coach.
Is it interesting to you or surprising to you, Brad, to see an Eagles defense that's so young really take to Vic's coaching style, knowing how you know them, how you know him?
No, I don't think so, because I think in some ways, guys are coached a little bit harder in college. They're gotten after, if you will. Vic's not afraid to do that, whether you're a corner sitting out on the edge or whether you're a big old Jalen Carter sitting in the middle of things. He's coached enough that he knows what technique he wants to see, and I think probably his style is as good for young guys as anybody's style.
Incredibly enough, Brad, Nick Sirianni is still underrated from a national perspective. What do you make of his coaching style and his coaching performance this season?
Yeah, I mean, arguably has had a great season. I know they exited in controversy last year with the turnover with Sean Desai and Matt Patricia and those guys, but he was forward thinking enough to know that, hey, he wanted to get Vic out of Miami. Vic had only been in Miami for a year, and it was probably mutual. Those guys want to go to South Beach, and Vic wants to coach football. They may want to go to Atlantic City from Philadelphia, but he's still going to get his football coached. So I think, right there is Pennsylvania, is his home state. He's not very far from home, and at heart, he's got to be happy he's in Philadelphia.
Last one for you, Brad. I appreciate you being so gracious with your time. If you think back, do you particularly have a memorable Eagles? It was Washington Redskins at the time, but a clash, any game that really sticks out in your memory?
Yeah, here's one for you. Monday night game at Washington Eagles. Okay, Eagles at Washington, I should say. And we're beating the brakes off of Steve Spurrier's team, I think it was. It might have been the first year. And so the crowd has dwindled. We still have probably 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And we had just kicked off because we had just scored again. And I remember Ike Reese of WIP fame there.
That's right.
Jogging to the sideline and taking a knee and taking his helmet off, and he's heaving and breathing in and out. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? That guy's not in very good shape. And in the next instant, I got a whiff of the pepper gas or tear gas or whatever it was that was coming from the stands right behind our bench. We all immediately started to walk forward on the field and to get away from that smell. And we were talking to guys upstairs in the booth. One of the guys was Sean McDermott. And so Sean McDermott is upstairs listening to this conversation and watching us all walk and say, I don't know, it's some kind of gas or what have you. And Sean jumped up and he goes, they're getting gas down there. And he reaches up and pulls the window down in the press box so that they didn't get gas. So they were going to get saved, but we were all going to die on the sideline. But it didn't end up happening. It ended up airing itself out, but you can't make it up.
Brad, how do you see this game playing out on Sunday?
Oh boy. I don't know. When you've got two interdivision rivals like that, it reminds of back in the Tom Landry days. It's always going to come down to the quarterback play at some point in time. And then somewhere, that defense is really going to be important. And so I would think that Philadelphia goes about their business and they're going to want to try to establish the run so they can open up the play action game. That's kind of how I see it. And then, the X factor of those two quarterbacks, they can do special things. And I shouldn't discount a guy like A.J. Brown or a Saquon Barkley. Guys die for those moments. I mean, they only come very few times in a lifetime.
And going back to your point to the Washington game that you remember, I think it might be the same game, but somebody asked me that on the air, and I think back to the Steve Spurrier game where he kind of throws his head up and he's doing like the duck lips, like he's just like completely exasperated from what you guys are being able to do to his team. That's the one that really sticks out to me.
Yeah, he's had about 8 sheets of loose leaf paper of legal pad paper, and he's trying to fold through them and look at what he wants to look at. And I saw him at the combine one time. I introduced myself as like, Coach, I'm Brad Childress. Just want to say hello. You're done. He goes, I know who you are, Brad. He goes, I like to talk to I like to talk to somebody sometime. I wonder what all Andy got written down on that sheet that big card he's got, looked from front to back on. I said, well, you probably have to talk to coach about that to get a peek at that. But it's not magic on there.
That's funny. Well, Brad, I really appreciate you carving out some time and walking down memory lane and providing a lot of insight. This has been a lot of fun. For Brad Childress, I'm Andrew DiCecco. This very special edition of Eagles NFC Championship Inside the Birds preview here. I'll talk to everybody soon.